Hello, welcome to my channel. This is Sarah from This Curly Girl Sews. This is part two of the two-part sewing sequins. The first part, if you missed it, was actually sewing the sequin elasticated waist skirt that's fully lined. So go and watch part one, and this is part two, so you can join us for the second part, which is making the top to go with it. The top is basically going to be a semi-fitted round neck top with fitted sleeves. It's not going to be too fitted, and I've decided not to put a zip in the back, just to put an opening with a button and a loop, so it's easy to get on and off, and it's not too restrictive to wear. My pattern that I've chosen, puff and frill top, which is the pattern that I used to sell, but I don't any longer. So I've cut out basically a sequin and lining version of the top. So I have two back pieces in the sequins, two back pieces in the lining, one cut in the fold for the front and one cut in the fold for the lining, and the same for the sleeves. So I have two lots of sleeves. What I need to do now is actually mark all of the darts. So I have a little dart on the back on the shoulder, I have the bust darts on the front, and I have a little sleeve dart just on the back of the arm there. So I just need to mark all of those and sew all of that on both the sequins fabric and also on the lining. And then what we're going to do is sew the shoulders together and then attach the lining to the sequins around the neck, so it makes a lovely tidy neckline. And then we can assemble the rest of the top. So let's get started with the darts. Start with the front. This is the armhole around here, and then the side seam. So this is the pattern piece. So what you need to do is actually just transfer the marking for the dart actually onto the fabric. So I've got a washable pen here, so literally I can just mark them with the pen, and then the apex of the dart there, or if you want, you can mark with a pin, and then basically you're forming a triangle there that you're actually going to sew the dart into, and do that on both sides. As I say, do that on all the darts that you need to. In my case, it is the shoulder on the back and the arm at the elbow. So now you're going to sew together the shoulders. So you've got the two back pieces there. You haven't sewn the back, centre back yet. Get the front and lay right sides of the sequins to the right sides of the sequins and pin the shoulders together. And then you're going to sew the shoulders together. And do that on the outer fabric and also the lining. Because the next thing you're going to do is actually sew the outer fabric and lining together. So that's the outer fabric done. Do exactly the same on the lining fabric. You're going to do exactly the same with the lining. So make sure you've got the centre back in the centre there so that the armholes are lined up. And then right sides together, pin the shoulders of the lining together as you have with the outer fabric, and then exactly the same on the other side. And then you're going to sew both the lining and the outer fabric along the shoulder seams. So I've laid the lining with the right side facing up. You can see that open back there, and then the neckline is there. So what you're going to do now is actually sew the neckline of the lining and the neckline of the outer fabric together at the neck. So if you lay the outer fabric on top of the lining so that the right sides are together, lining up the shoulder seams on both of them, and open out those shoulder seams so you get less bulk. Pin the shoulders together. And then you just need to pin around the neck should be exactly the same size, so it shouldn't be the case of having to ease it at all. As long as you've kept the seam allowance the same on both pieces. They've actually obviously been cut identically. So literally just lay one on top of the other, pin it together around, and then you're going to sew around the neckline. Then once you've sewn around the neckline, what you're going to do is actually fold the seam allowance to the lining and actually sew the lining to the seam allowance, so that it makes sure that the lining stays on the inside and doesn't try and come to the outside. It basically stays underneath all the time, so it's nice and neat. So first of all, we just need to sew around that neckline there. I've sewn around the neckline there now, so you can see that's all nice around the neckline. And then on the lining side, I've just turned the lining to the seam allowance on the inside. So you open it out like that and sew along the lining with the seam allowance caught underneath, so that you're basically sewing everything to the lining, so there's nothing sewn to the outer fabric, and that just makes the lining stay inside and roll over. So on the back neckline, if you put up everything inside out, what you're going to do is sew down about 8 centimetres down either side, so that you've actually got like an opening at the back, and you're going to put just a loop at the top. So you just need to make your loop. So you just need to make a loop now. So if you get a piece of fabric, I'm using my lining fabric because obviously the sequin would be a bit awkward to do it with. About 3 centimetres wide and about 9 centimetres long. You won't need any more than that. And then you fold it in half lengthways and then sew so that it's about 1/2 centimetre on the folded edge, and then you're going to basically cut the seam allowance off and then turn it inside out to form your loop. So as you can see, I've just sewn, that's the folded edge there. I've sewn 2 rows of stitches. You don't have to do 2. I did the first one a little bit wide, so I just went in a little bit narrower the second time. And then what you're going to do is cut close to the stitching. So just cut down there and then turn that strap in the right way so that all this is on the inside. I'm using what's called a loop turner. So basically I push that up through, lock it off, and then pull that down through, like so. And you end up with a lovely thin loop for your button. So I'm just going to trim the ends off of that so that they're not lumpy. So what you need to do on the right hand side of your top is just fold that in half, and you actually just need to sew this onto the top. So you need to think how big you want your button and then sew it. I would suggest you baste it before you actually sew down your 8 centimetres to close up that thing. So just pin that in place and then you're just going to sew that to baste it in place. So I've just basted the loop in place now. What you're going to do is actually fold that over and then sew down 8 centimetres along here. So if you just pin that at the top and then just sew down both of the layers together, because you're going to be forming the little opening at the top, and it's just about 8 centimetres down both sides of the back of the neck there, and then you can close up the lining and the outer after that. So once you've sewn those corners down, you can just trim the top off. The same on the other side as well with the loop. Just trim that off, get rid of the bulk, and then you'll be able to fold those out. So that forms the loop on one side, and then you'll sew the button onto the other side. So before you sew the back pieces together, make sure you lay it out flat so that it's not twisted. So what you don't want to do is what I just did, and sew it together and have to unpick it. So lay your back pieces flat like that, and then you can just turn it over like that. And so down the centre back seam on both the lining and the outer fabric. So that's the back and the front sewn together. So that's the back with the seam down the back, and then you've got a little opening there for your head. You just need to sew a button on that. But that's all good. So the last thing to do is the sleeves. So what we're going to do is sew up the side seams of the outer and the side seams of the lining first of all, and then set that aside. And then you take your sleeves and do exactly the same with the sleeves. So you attach, so this underarm sleeve seam on both of the lining sleeves and both of the outer fabric sleeves. So you'll end up with 4 sleeves. It should be 2 pairs. So again, just fold them over, and then you're going to sew the underarm seam on the sleeves and the linings. And then the only thing to do then is to set the sleeves into the body. So I've just tried on my top, and before I put the sleeves on, and I need to just narrow the shoulders very slightly. So I'm going to cut the armhole in a little bit, and also make the body slightly more fitted. So I'm going to basically take the body in on both sides as well. So I'm basically going to make the whole thing slightly narrower. So I've recut my side seam and my armhole. So basically I've just narrowed the pattern down completely. And I've also pinned the sleeve into the armhole. So basically right sides together. If you have the fabric inside out, so that's the right side. This is the inside of the fabric. Turn your sleeve so that it's the right way round, and then put your sleeve actually inside the body. Then you can just ease it around the armhole, and then you just need to stitch the sleeves in. Do that both on the 2 outside sleeves. I've done this one already, and then on the lining as well. And then once you've sewn all 4 sleeves in, so the 2 on the outer, the 2 on the lining, then you're actually going to turn the lining through to the inside of the sleeves, and then you can hem the sleeves together, and then hem the bottom of the top as well. So the sleeves are now sewn in, as you can see. What I've done is I turned everything in the right way, and I've turned the lining into the inside of the sleeve. And what I did, I actually basted the lining of the sleeve and the outer together, with the cut off at the bottom, and then literally I just folded the 2 up together, and then actually just run a hem round the bottom of the sleeve. I actually hemmed the lining and the outer sequin separately, because I didn't want it to be restrictive on how the sequin actually moved. So I've hemmed those separately. I did actually cut off about 4 centimeters off the lining fabric so that the lining wouldn't actually come down beyond where the sequins come down. But yeah, that's it now. So I hemmed the sleeves and the body. I just needed to sew a button on the back there, which I've done. A little button there just to go through the loop. So there we go. And that's on the back of the neck. So that's all done. Very simple and easy. Top is just a loose-ish top. Long sleeves. I cut the sleeves a little bit too short, unfortunately, but I've put my pink cuffs on there, which looks cool. So that's a completed look, and I can wear them as separates as well. That's your top finished. I hope you enjoyed sewing along. Don't forget, if you haven't already watched part 1, to watch part 1. I'll put a link down below for you to watch that one as well. That's actually for the skirt, the matching sequin skirt with the elasticated waist. Also, please like the video if you like it, and also don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I need lots of subscribers so that I can obviously make lots more content. I have a series of 3 videos coming up soon, which are going to be upcycling videos. So they'll be really excited. There's 3 really exciting projects there. I hope you like this video. As I say, like below, and I'll see you soon. Bye.